Florida, coming at you from the Melio Entrepreneur House. This is exciting. Today we're going to be talking about scaling up and what that means. And that's a very interesting conversation. We hear lots of small business owners talk about scaling up. Before we jump in, let's meet our panelists. We have Florcy, Jordan, and Marissa, and I'm super excited that y'all are here first of all. But let's tell a little bit about ourselves. And Marissa, tell me a little bit about you.
My name is Marissa Friedman. I run a boutique strategy firm. We focus on business units within the Fortune 100. And I also design entrepreneurial programs for small business owners in regional and local communities. So brick and mortar businesses that are trying to get online, trying to create a more national or kind of global impact, as it were. So what's really fun about this is small business owners are my jam, understanding the mindset of a small business owner and how they create impact in their communities. And I'm just super excited to be here with Jordan and Florcy. And you, of course.
We're glad to have you. Jordan, tell me, I want you to sort of tell us a little bit about you and what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jordan Worthington. I'm based on the other side of the pond out of London. And I've spent the last few years working with some of the most amazing healthcare groups inside of Europe, working with about 700 to 800 different small businesses inside of the portfolio and seeing them scale rapidly as some of the fastest growing companies in the space. And more recently, I've started working with a bunch of early stage tech companies, and I'm helping them to find their product market fit and to grow. So I'm very excited about product growth, and it's lovely to be here.
It's interesting because product growth, even for tech companies, is very similar for small business owners. And in some of the earlier conversations, that kind of came up, and that's really interesting. Now, last but certainly not least, Florcy, we're so glad you're here. And if you'll tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Florcy Morissette. I'm so happy to be here. I am a former entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 26, which is the art gallery. I quickly pivoted into big tech, where I worked at Dell Technologies, Netflix, and I currently now work at Accenture as a metaverse business strategist. Interestingly enough, everything that I've been doing has been around people, solving super creative problems, right, that are tethered to art, culture, and technology. My recent stint as an entrepreneur was launching an NFT project as well as my crypto flossing brand. I love small business owners because that's how I began my career. And I think being bootstrappy and literally very super lean is the magic sauce that I bring to everything that I do.
But we talk about scaling up and there's some themes here, but I'm just curious, before we just jump into scale up, let's talk about what does scaling up actually mean. And Marissa, if you want to kick us off and tell us what you think scaling up means and how that's, tell us your thoughts.
I think when it comes to small business owners, in the context of what they're trying to do, is that they just want to step out of running the day-to-day, right? They are wearing all the hats. They are sales, operations, marketing, customer service. They're running to the bank to do deposits. They're trying to do 20 jobs, and you can't do 20 jobs well. So the idea of scale, I think, really applies to what are the right people that I need to bring into my company? What are the right tools and systems that I need to integrate into the organization? And then how do I deploy this without breaking the bank, without overreaching or growing too fast, right? And so I think today what I'm seeing and what we've all kind of talked about together beforehand was how do we create an ecosystem that makes it really easy for a small business owner to grow and to grow out of that like day-to-day of running a business.
We're going to come back to all of those things that you just said, because that's exactly what I hear from a lot of business owners. Jordan, when we talk scale up, how do you see it? I mean, you may have a different perception here.
Well, I think what Marissa said is actually spot on. So it aligns to a lot of the things that I would also think inside of the space. However, one of the things that everybody doesn't talk about is that almost every business in existence exists to grow. People want it to scale. People want to change that business into something more that's going to continuously evolve and become something different. And I think to focus particularly on scaling up is to know what you want to achieve in terms of that end goal, and then start to break that down into bite-sized chunks of how do you actually get there? How do you achieve this? Because it's very easy, as Marissa said, if you're working in your business, you're not working on it, but when you start working on it, it's really important to have a defined goal to say, this is where I want to take it, and then who do I need, how do I need to adapt to make that happen?
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that, Florcy?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the key words around scaling has been growth, right? And when I think about growth, I think about, all right, I had 10 customers, how do I get 1,000? How do I get 10,000? How to get to 100,000, right? That's making scaling real. And so it's looking at your customer base. Secondarily, it's looking at your team. And sometimes right now, I think we're in a space, it's not about necessarily growing your team, it's about maximizing their output and their efficiency and productivity, right? By thinking smart and making sure that there's alignment with your strategy and your goal. There was an earlier panel that talked about, the success measures is not having, going from 100 to about, 1,000 employees, right? So maybe scaling is saying, you know what, we've had a market, we've been in the US, or we're super local in the state of Maryland. Now we want to scale and make sure that our products are reaching new audiences and new spaces, and maybe it's differentiating your product. So scalability to me is really getting down to the nitty gritty around what are the products, what are the people, and the third piece is, which is something that I think is being revolutionized right now. It's about less people, minimizing cost, right? And really thinking about maximizing productivity. It's not just about sales. Right now we're thinking about retention of customers, right? But it's really about thinking about how do we actually do more with less? And so for me, that is how I define scale. So, at the heart of this, we're talking about small business owners and how do they scale. It's important that you are making sure that your business is resilient and that when headwinds do come, that you don't lose value. So it's about preservation. It's about resilience, right? It's making sure that you don't lose your customers, you don't lose revenue, and that you're having sustainable practice in place to protect what you have. So, because that's half the battle. A lot of times we're always thinking about growing, but there are a lot of businesses, as we keep hearing this idea, this recession is coming, and people are saying you need to make sure you have a little bit of a nest egg to the side, not only to make sure that you can take care of your business, but that you can also innovate and test, right? And do some experimentation. And so it's about, for me, when I think about times of headwinds and, no one could have ever imagined COVID. But if you were so tight and was being overly, spending a lot of money in places that were not bringing you value, you were feeling that hit.
And to that point, almost all industries had winners and losers.
1,000%.
And there's some that came out even stronger and are leaner and meaner, and they probably had the whiteboard and they had to reorg. But there are clear in every single industry winners and losers during that. And I think that speaks to being able to innovate in strategic ways.
So we were talking about impact. I live obviously in San Diego County, and there were some numbers that was 65% of the restaurants closed during COVID. Of that 65, only 40% reopened. So when we talk about winners and losers, we can talk about hospitality, right? We can talk about restaurants, brick and mortar places, your neighborhood bodega, your local coffee shop. Some of them didn't make it, right? A $9 latte was no longer a fun thought, right? People wanted 7-Eleven, or they wanted the Circle K Sip and Save for $5 a month, all you could drink. So businesses were forced to innovate. Let's be clear. Innovation wasn't on the top of mind, but they're every local business was I got to get on a delivery service because I can make that money back, right? The second thing that we talked about was when you look at that and when you're making an assessment, you're trimming the fat and you're trying to decide what do I need to keep or kill, you have to think about what happens when your biggest customer leaves. If you had a business, right, where 80% of your business was coming from one big customer, that was a risk, right? Because when that customer left, and so what we saw was businesses had dependencies on one product line or one customer and had built things around this one thing, and then they left and they went, oh God, what do I do? So I think looking critically at your business and saying, if tomorrow our business changed and our biggest customer left, would we be okay? If we weren't okay, what things and changes were we going to make? Right?
Are there some red flags for business owners where they aren't aware of something that's an Achilles heel? Like you said, if you have one customer and it's 80% of your income, that's dangerous. It could be dangerous.
Anytime I meet a business where they say they're like a family, that's my red flag. Oh. And the reason is, right, I think we talked about this collaboration. Jordan and I have talked about this. Florcy and I have talked about this. If they say that they're a family, here's what happens. If they introduce someone into that company or that culture that's pointing out a flaw, that person is automatically labeled as what? They're negative, they're critical, but they need that person because too many people that think the same way are not going to see the blind spot. So I think it's a balance of rigorous honesty, radical candor, and
That's such a great book, by the
being,
way.
being able to kind of welcome people and have people around you. You know, my youngest employee is 21, my oldest is 82. The reason for that is I want people to challenge me. I want people to say, hey, you know what? This doesn't make sense. So again, when I go into a small business and everyone's telling me how much they're like family, I know two things. They're hyper dysfunctional and they probably all think the same way, right? So those two things for me on a culture and a business standpoint, and I think we've talked about that a lot, like you might overhire because everyone's like, yes, we've got to grow. And no one's saying, hey, but like, are we growing too fast? Does this really meet what we need to do? And I mean, Jordan, you talked about this yesterday, so I would hand that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've got to look at the market conditions as well, because when COVID came in as an example, it was a whirlwind and it did wipe out a lot of businesses. And there's some businesses that innovated and then really deserved the growth that they had, but there's other businesses that just soaked up market because they lasted longer than the competition. When that market space is still there and the customers are still around, in the next 12, 18 months, how many new businesses are now going to open up in the area because they can see the opportunity? So you've kind of seen a growth rate for a couple of years because other people are being wiped out. Doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to see that continued growth, especially with a looming recession. So I think looking at the context of why your business is growing is really, really important as an overall function.
Yeah. I just want to tag on to what you're saying and actually add a tip. I think companies need to be ambidextrous. My response was like a red flag if they're not digital, but I also think if you can't do hand-to-hand business, high touch, right, where you had to say, you know what, I need to actually pick up the phone and I need to minimize and get back to the fundamentals of how I originally ran my business because it's no longer going to work in these market conditions. But I think a red flag is, seeing a company being flexible, like either overly leveraged as a digital company or overly leveraged and being old school and traditional. And I think you need a nice balance of both.
This whole concept that people have, I'm obviously in branding and marketing and strategy, and it's like insecurity has been rebranded as imposter syndrome. And it's okay to be insecure. You're not going to know everything the first time. I was not born an entrepreneur. I worked in a corporate business for 5 years, B2B, in the tech space, right? So I had no understanding of cash flow, of budgets, of like, oh, I'm going to work today, but I don't get paid for 60 days. So like, what does that do? And so like, it's okay to be insecure in a particular area of the business, but then supplement that knowledge with other people that are going to come together with you. And I think we don't hear enough about that. What we hear is like, you ask people how they're doing, and what do they say? I'm fine.
Fine, yeah.
I'm fine. And they're hoping that you don't really want to know, and you're hoping that they just say fine because you really don't want to know either. So I think there's a combination when you are a small business owner of actually saying like, you know what, I'm really struggling with trying to understand or identify different ways to leverage cash flow. I don't have insight into my aging or my receivables. That's again why like automation and tools that give you a really quick view. If you're not a finance whiz, a tool like Melio is going to help you because you can just visually see what's going on in the business. So if you're a founder and you're a 50,000 foot vision person, the 6 foot mechanics of running a business are going to drive you insane. So then find someone that can be 6 feet.
Right,
and stay at your 50,000.
I'd like to also add and just kind of jump in. I was a young entrepreneur at the age of 26. And I think, Jordan, you hit it. Like, I wanted to just sell art, but I didn't understand and I didn't know. And there are a lot of times entrepreneurs and business owners have blind spots. And so I think it's also important to have people around you that may definitely have more multidisciplinary understanding of business. But I also think that there's a piece of saying, yes, I may not be knowledgeable in this area, but there's also that I have a blind spot. And so there's an importance in trying to be part of a mentorship program and really figuring out, or whatever the case may be, having
Absolutely.
people, finding the right community or ecosystem to be around you to help you and illuminate what those, blind spots might be. The second piece to that is I think the core to what operations are is really driving your strategic initiatives and goals and making sure that being clear, this is what we're trying to accomplish this quarter. This is what we're trying to accomplish within the next 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year mile marks. And then allow your operations to then be defined and what you're doing day to day, to support those goals. Because a lot of times you end up doing a lot of busy work, app subscriptions, functional things that are not actually driving value to your work or to your company. And so you want to be really thoughtful about what are you doing as a business day-to-day operating, and how does it align to my ultimate initiative and goal?
So I think for me, this year and the next 2 years, my goal has been to meet as many strangers as possible and to put myself in situations where maybe I'm not the most comfortable. So definitely, I think I came into this space with a pre-formulated idea and opinion based on all of my social media stalking. And what I actually encountered was a great diversity of thought, great diversity of age, right? So I think sometimes it's really great when you're at a later stage in business, like I am, to be around younger people and to remember what that was like, right? Remember that, at some point, I joke now I kind of suffer from enlightened humility, but what was that like when you were at that age and you were just unstoppable, right? Life hadn't beaten you up yet, right? And so what's cool about that, though, is being able, being asked for mentorship was really invaluable for me, because you don't grow by keeping it all inside, you give it away. And two is just to remember the different stage. A friend of mine who's the founder of UGG, he always says you cannot give birth to an adult in business. And so I think that's what this experience was. It was getting to see people at their different phases of entrepreneurship and small business, and getting to know that hey, this person right now is a toddler in business, or this person's a teenager, or this person is retiring and on their way out and exiting. And so to have that life cycle and ecosystem all together in one space was really unique and really special.